Hello and welcome to Building Conversations. I'm your host, Greg Dunkel, Chief Operating Officer at STO Building Group. Today, I'm joined by three of my good friends, James Mazzadri, Estimating Manager at Structure Toe, New York, Troy Addis, Senior Vice President at LFD, and Kurt Thomas, Vice President, Business Development at Leighton Construction. On a personal note, I grew up in operations, but ended up finding my true love in pre-construction and estimating when I married my wife 23 years ago. So this is a great connection between operations and pre-construction, and we're going to learn a lot today about our friends in pre-construction and how they set the tone with the owner and set the tone at the very beginning of the project to set up operations for a great project. So, James, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the pre-construction phase for the work that you perform and the types of projects that you support?
Absolutely. So we're probably a little bit different than most in the sense that New York is predominantly interiors, which is inside the four walls of the main building. The focus for us is usually speed to market, right? And getting tenants moved in. There's usually lease expiration requirements where they have to be out of another space, i.e. moved into their new space by a certain date, or there's hefty financial penalties. So the focus for us in Precon is making sure that we have, all those things worked out early on, that all the materials are going to be on site when we need them, that the labor force is available, basically everything lined up so that when we start construction on site, there's no hiccups. We have, complete schedule certainty. And then the second part of it is sort of being an advisor to the client and a partner to the client to help them understand one of two scenarios, one of which is what is their design worth? Like if they come to us with a fully baked design, what is it worth? And what do we think the market's going to price it at when we ultimately go out to bid? And the second part of it could be, what can we get with X amount of a budget? And that's where we can kind of help a little bit more, right? We can help guide their design decisions to get the most efficiency or the most bang for the buck, as much as we can get them for the dollars that they want.
Yeah, you mentioned something there that is really key in that market, and with those types of projects, you really don't have 12 and 6 months of pre-con in order to prepare. You guys come out of the gate pretty quick, so appreciate that part. Troy, everything from your tiny jobs to your $1 billion plus jobs. Tell us how you can manage all that.
So I think the major difference here is that we are brought in very early on projects, whether it's a napkin sketch of an idea or something at a very early concept level. So we're brought in early where we have to have a clear understanding what the needs are, try to understand what the goals and the visions of the projects are, have a clear understanding to get started with the team. Site specifics, when we're working on a lot of core and shell projects, there's a lot of, we all understand that sites are all different. So understanding what the site requirements are for a project are important. And then from there, we lead into the full development. We like to bring a team on early, including all the field operations and the VDC team and the scheduling team early on. So we all have a clear understanding and understanding what the direction is for the smaller and bigger projects.
Thanks, Troy. And moving on to Kurt. Kurt, I know that you span quite a distance in geography in the West with the NBG group at Leighton. How does that tie into the two previous pre-construction efforts, and then also your ability to really serve a huge geographic base and also a large volume in your team?
Yeah, great question, Greg. It's interesting. We focus on different sectors than both James and Troy. And so there is overlap geographically, but not a whole lot of overlap as far as product type and projects. And it's interesting as far as, sophistication of our owners in healthcare, being able to bring, as Troy mentioned, bring us on super early and have us helping through that process. And a lot of the industrial or cold storage folks are actually turning that direction as well. They're starting to realize the value of pre-construction, whether it's a project in Oregon, upstate New York, down into Texas and Florida, California. We're working with clients that are starting to understand, hey, they're doing it in healthcare and in other sectors and other markets for a reason, and there's value in it. And they're starting to see that value that we're able to bring in the pre-construction.
Thanks, Kurt. A great theme between all three is how you develop your clients and then show real value from the onset, and then also the repeat clients and them taking you to these different opportunities. So I appreciate the hard work that's done there. Troy, one of your, or a few of your projects, I know at Penn First, the integrated project delivery was used, and I was hoping if maybe you could share some of your experiences. What may be one of the largest, if not the largest, healthcare facility that used IPD in the United States. If you could help us understand what that looked like and how your team provided services, that'd be great.
Sure. IPD is a new idea. It's an onboarding of not only the contractor but the architect and the ownership, all buying into one contractual obligation to build a project. And so it allows us to be more transparent. We need to be more collaborative as a team to develop what the need is for the project, because we're all working for the project, not in our individual silos of work. We all have to be held accountable for the totality of the project. It's very important to understand that. But during the process, because you're really doing a real-time estimating effort rather than individual estimates based on a project or document direction, you have to be nimble because you're regularly changing what you think the project may need or what the project is and where the costs are for that. And not only nimble for cost, but nimble for schedule, logistics, and all the planning necessary for the project. But it's been very successful. We've actually convinced this particular owner to move forward with other IPD projects, some of them even smaller. So it's not always necessarily the largest project that needs to be IPD. If it makes sense for a project that's smaller, that let's say has an enabling plan or phasing plan, they want to bring teams in on board to help understand the project as much as, develop the pricing for the project. So it's been very successful. We're moving forward with the same, with a particular owner that probably will move forward with mostly IPDs in the future. So for that reason, it was very successful. But we also see it trickle down into our other projects. So like our behaviors, being transparent, being collaborative, being more accountable. You start to see that more on the projects with the IPD like, or however they want to label it. So it's changed us as a whole in the estimating department. And then there's products we'll talk about, I guess. What are the softwares and platforms that we use that are very helpful in the sense of IPD and our futures? But it's been very successful.
I know that had a wonderful finish, and certainly was through COVID too, where you guys were able to change gears and provide for the owner and the community on that project. So great stuff. James, we did talk a little bit about how quickly you got to get out of the gate. Are there other challenges and unique parts of the pre-construction phase and what you need to do for your owner and your teams in the interiors group?
Absolutely. So a lot of times you'll have what I call the long pole in the tent, right? A design feature or an element of the actual project that would historically control the overall duration of the job. And it could be, a complex feature stair that runs through an entire building or, something along those lines, where we don't want to let that control the end date, right? A lot of times that can sort of take control of the job and, hey, that's the 60-week thing or the 40-week thing, but the rest of the construction project should be 36, 38 weeks, right? How can we break that out separate and identify that and pull that out separately and tackle it differently? A lot of projects now we're doing exactly that. And we're trying to take bites out of the overall project, right? That bell curve of work in place. We're trying to pull some of that bell curve earlier, right, to try and flatten out the amount of work that goes in place. And it becomes evident on project sizes from a couple $1 million to one in recent memory was north of 500 million, where we're expected to try and put 40 million a month in place over 18 months. Right, it's a daunting task, and if you realize that the reality of that is you're never going to put 40 million a month in place for the first 2 or 3 months while you're getting out of the gate, and the same on the back end. Now, all of a sudden, you need to be at 50 or 60 at the peak of that bell curve. Is how do you try and flatten that out and expand it? And it's by doing that. It's trying to bite pieces out of the job that you can pull forward and let focused teams take care of some of those packages on a separate work stream. And while that, it becomes very evident on a large job like that, the same can be said on a smaller job where you have an internal staircase that's a 40-week staircase, but the job could be fit out in 26 weeks. We'll pull that staircase out and bring a group of specialty subcontractors in to pull that and take over the design, take over the detailing, the fabrication, installation, completely separate from the construction documents and the rest of the design team's deliverables. So it sort of takes a little bit of a pressure off of, that high point of the
It sounds
job.
like too with how quickly some of these are moving, that your team in at least some of the projects I've been able to tour and see, your team stays connected with the operations team because of the changes that sometimes some of your unique clients are demanding throughout the project, which we know doesn't make things easy. How do you stay connected to a job? How does your staff stay side by side with the operations team and the owner to make it successful?
Something I think that we do that is probably a little bit different from the rest of the market, at least here in New York, is our Precon and estimating teams don't hand the job off to an operations group when once we get to awards. We actually leave our estimating groups with the projects, and I think it provides a lot of value. One, because there's a lot of brain power that gets generated in that Precon, right? There's a lot of learning and understanding of the complexities and the intricacies of the job. And then two, there's a deep understanding of how the job is bought out, so that if and when changes and or issues come up throughout the course of the job, we're not burdening the operations folks with trying to weed through those details and come up with the answers and come up with the best solutions. We're letting the operations folks focus on what's important, which is quality and the coordination of the job, and making sure that end date is the guiding light, the North Star for them. So it takes a lot of pressure off of us operationally for those folks, but it also puts the right people in charge of helping guide the decision-making process and guide those changes and make sure that the dollars and cents are taken care of in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. A young employee was down in the estimating department, and I went down to see her the other day and to follow up, and yep, she had left the office and she's out on site with the team. So real good example of not only follow them into the field, but sometimes are in the field with the ops team. So that's a great service to the entire team.
So we feel the same way, Greg, because, we in our estimating department, we do the purchasing. So we're well into the project because we obviously, as said, we know what the project's all about. We know how to purchase. And not only that, we're purchasing trades way early, right? Because we have all this procurement issues to worry about. We're purchasing in the estimating phase of the project. But I also would add that we bring in operations early on to make sure we're getting them engaged to understand what to purchase. Because logistically, they're going to be the experts on how to buy a job with logistics. They're going to know what the hoisting plans are. They're going to know what staffing is necessary. So getting them in early, as I said earlier, is the best way to buy it from the estimating department. As the transition happens and we turn over the project, we stay engaged with the change orders, obviously, or anything that happens during the project, because, again, we are the experts of knowing how it was bought. And so it makes sense to stay engaged, not physically in the field per se, but participating,
and I'd like to hear on your intro about you're also responsible for scheduling too now, which is a huge part of purchasing and getting a job into the field, right? Is understanding what schedule we have, basically promised to the owner. And if we're not aligning our subs and our teams up with that schedule, it can be a real mess. So I'm glad to hear, you're kind of bridging those.
Right. And what happens is like we're siloed here in our company, right? We have the estimating, we have scheduling, we have operations. But my idea is, look, we need to have a schedule accurate like our estimating, right? We need to make sure they're all integrated with one another. So participating more with the schedule development with the team while we're doing the estimate makes sense for the project.
Kurt, as you, again, have so many clients and so far reach from your base there in Salt Lake at Layton, are there really unique challenges that you see with some of your industrial clients and how you build? And I also, am familiar with many of your projects that they go super quick once the trigger is pulled. Maybe you can help us with your unique projects, how you overcome those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar. It's interesting being able to listen to James talk, and I'm like, oh yeah, we do things very similar. Troy talks, and I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. We do things, very similar, even though those two seem extremely different from each other, those two approaches, right? Where Troy's talking about this really long front end pre-construction process. And there are clients that want that. We have multifamily jobs that we do. that really want us involved super early and want us helping, provide analysis on structures. Is it best to go with PT or a cold form metal stud or a wood frame building? All these kinds of things. But also on the industrial side, a lot of it is very similar to what James described, where we get brought in and it's like, hey, you got to mobilize in 6 weeks. We need a price. Let's go. And some of these clients hand us a set of drawings and a schedule and say, hey, this is what we need you to perform to. And they have everybody says these are simple industrial buildings, right? A concrete tilt box that's empty inside. And, one of the biggest industrial developers in the country that we do a ton of work with across the country came to us and handed us a 200,000 square foot building. Very simple, easy job. We turned around and priced it to them, and the price was completely out of whack. So before we turned in that number, I called the owner's rep over there and said, hey, your project is designed inefficiently, and it's got 12-foot tall parapets. You have underground water storage where you don't need it on this site, and ran through a whole list of things. And went through, it was kind of a VE effort, right? Which is super reactive, but this developer thought that they had it all figured out and had it designed appropriately. And when we went through this, they recognized the value that we brought in pre-construction. They did have to go through a 6-week redesign, and resubmit the plans to the city. But ultimately, we saved them millions of dollars in a 2 or 3 week effort, really looking at the drawings, thinking critically, and then presenting it to them in a way that they could make those.
Yeah, that certainly, Kurt, is another real good reason to get in super early than just an owner handing us drawings that are already fully baked. If you could have been there 5 months earlier with a few touch points with that design team, knowing that site and knowing how you build many and many jobs like that, that experience just could have paid off much earlier. But certainly glad you got them turned around when you did. So I'm thinking, obviously, all of you need to knit together not only subcontractors, but designers, owners reps, sometimes tenants, sometimes building managers. What technology do each of you use? And maybe, Kurt, we'll start back with you again. What technology do you use in order to help make sure things don't slip through the cracks?
We use a lot of different technologies, to be honest with you, Greg. One that comes to mind right off the top of my head is Join. And I know that Troy and James probably are way more involved in Join than I am. But we do use Join, and Join's a great piece of software that we use to really help inform the client of the process, right? Of how their decisions are affecting both schedule and cost throughout the pre-construction phase. And so as you go through this Join, you're able to have benchmarks and allow the owner to go in and say, hey, I've made this change, or we've discussed this change, and now they are accepting that change and seeing how it influences schedule, how it influences budget in real time. And so that's one that we use, as clients, like you said, Greg, bring us in early enough to have it be effective. That's something that we use to really allow the owner to see how their decisions are affecting the project.
Yeah. Troy or James, anything to add?
To add to the Join, the nice thing about it is that all the stakeholders have access to it. And so they're part of the change of the project. So if there's things going on, they're aware of it. They actually have full access, if we would allow, for them to make changes with us. So, it gives you a good history of what's going on. It tracks all the way across the board. It's real-time collaboration. Other platforms, when we do VDC, and we talk about BIM for a long time, but there's a lot of platforms that we use to create the VDC logistic planning that we do, and all those great things with 4D scheduling, things like that. But we also use Assemble, and we use a Smartsheet platform for all the communications that we want to deal with internally. And then, of course, there's communication products like BuildingConnected that we use to communicate with the subcontractors during the bidding process. And then to do pool planning, we use Touchplan, which is a pool planning scheduling program that we use a lot for IPD. But we're seeing that superintendents really like the product because it's a day-to-day view of the schedule and what's changing. So it's it's not only just Primavera, it's another product that you kind of look at a pull plan of the project, which is a nice back check of where you are with the project.
James?
Yeah, I mean, to echo what both of them are saying is, in New York, logistics planning, picture doing a crane pick on Fifth Ave,
Right.
You got to be real precise. So we use VDC to lay those out, and what is the boom reach, and how high can we get, and what setback can we land on, and what are the clearances. So all of those things, 15, 20 years ago, that would take time, right? It would take all this time and effort to go into putting a study together. Now can be done so much faster, which just helps, it helps create the condensed schedules and squeezing everything into a tighter and tighter schedule. So we're able to perform projects on a much faster pace because of technology like that just makes something that would have been a long exercise.
James, you made a comment about crane picks, and I have to tell the story that on one of your projects in New York City, you actually had a crane pick up another crane and put it on the building so you could service your clients. And, you don't see that kind of ingenuity and creativity on a project, but that was certainly a first for me, seeing a crane lifting another crane into a permanent or semi-permanent position on a project. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah, it's a great picture.
It's amazing.
Temporary street closure crane to lift another crane to set it up on the roof so that it can stay there.
It's amazing when you model in 3D how quickly you can tell a story, of a specific of a project, because it's visually there. You can see it, you can understand it. You're not trying to evaluate it 2D imagery. The 3D really tells a good story of what these difficult situations.
Yeah, I think you had something similar, very tricky, which the bridge you guys put up at Penn First as well, right?
Yes. I mean, a lot of those type of, you can take a Penn First and peel it down to a lot of situations where modeling it, understanding it, and just traffic alone and the owner understanding what the traffic pattern may change to be for a crane pick or something along that line. It's a great tool to have. As time goes on, we get better and quicker with it. And so it's more available to us, which is a great thing for the future.
Okay, we're going to go to the lightning round real quick with two questions. So I'm going to ask, in your pre-construction efforts, I'd like you to pick a primary sector that you work with, and then what is a high value activity or process that sector requires? And we'll start with Kurt on, again, it's what sector and what's a high value, really important part of your Precon for that sector?
I would say for cold storage, they really value the intricate knowledge of how their systems come together on the cold side. So the refrigeration system in that case.
James?
I would say interiors, the big push is speed to market, is how quickly can we get a tenant moved in with all things considered.
Is that from start to finish, or even at the end with you helping them, making sure that their burn-in period of their systems and the move works properly as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's all in. It's from start to finish till, what we call first day of business, where you have staff members sitting at their offices, sitting in their desks. It's speed from the date we're onboarded to how quickly can we get them moved in. And a lot of times that decides whether we're awarded a project or not. It's how quickly can we guarantee
that
them
day
occupancy.
One, when that person sits in their seat, they have to be able to work and not be obviously obstructed with punch list and anything else that's going on. I know you guys are experts at making sure that the job is in the right shape when it happens. So, Troy, you've got a lot of different sectors there. Just
I think one that comes to mind very quickly is our sophisticated renovated healthcare projects and ICRA. How important is ICRA to keep our patients safe, right? When we're trying to work in a facility and we need to control what's going on, and having a good ICRA plan and having everybody on board understanding what it is really crucial for projects.
Great example, especially when you're working for children's hospitals and some of the really delicate spaces that I know you guys are in all the time. I want to talk a little bit about change and evolution in your careers. James, let's start with you. What have you seen? We talked a little bit about technology. Maybe there's a few other things. Maybe it's the how you're hiring or looking for young new talent. What is it that's evolved over the years for your team?
I think James is a perfect example of something that we have been doing differently, which is the RPE program. It's developing teams early, teaching them what we do and how we do it early is usually the best way to get the best success out of a team member. They understand what we're doing. We're much more sophisticated today. We're faster paced. There's a high expectation for accuracy. And so training the youth to learn what we do and do it at a great job at a high level is really a very good success for us here at Driscoll.
Yeah, it's definitively the same in New York. I mean, a lot of the people that have risen to management level positions here in New York have all come through Structure Tone, right? They grew up, they grew their careers at Structure Tone with the expectations that we have and how we do things ultimately and how we serve our clients. You bring somebody in from another organization, and a lot of times that culture doesn't ring true, right? There's not that sense of ownership, whether or not it's definitively your responsibility or not. The people that succeed here are people that have that same mentality where it's, whatever it takes for any client, anywhere,
that's
anytime.
Wonderful to hear. I'll tell you, you hit a word that just rings true with me in my career is coming to STO BG is the ownership opportunity in our own company so that everything you do and every decision you make is a personal reflection on your opportunity to be an owner of the company. And I think that shapes in decisions and you said culture and even how we deal with our trades, each other, owners and regulatory people. It's a great feeling here. And I think that word ownership is huge. Kurt, anything to add on what you're seeing and the evolution of where we're headed?
Yeah, I just want to echo both what Troy and James have said, right? I kind of feel like that there was an old school mentality where you'd get a set of drawings and you'd just estimate it and turn it around and push it out the door. And that doesn't exist anymore, right? Those who are really making a difference, who are really pushing to change within our organization. And I've worked with Troy on several projects, so I know LF Driscoll is the same. Are the guys that are taking that extra step, that are looking out for our clients, that are trying to understand, hey, what's going to happen out in the field? Where's going to be the biggest pinch points? How can we solve issues today in pre-construction so they don't become an issue out in the field? So just echo exactly what everybody said here.
So we're going to move on to risk mitigation, cost savings, without divulging any information that is proprietary to our owners or subject to an NDA. Think about what would be a significant cost savings. And I think, Kurt, you hit a big one there, which is, hey, you were able to help with a proper design for a proper site plat that was a little unique. How about a couple examples of where you can recall that, boy, you really hit a home run for the owner, for our company, for your people? Troy, do you want to start with that one?
Every project has some form of value engineer or cost reduction or cost change. And so there are many ideas of that and many examples. But I can tell you this. When I look into the city and I see some of the structures that we built, and I can look at part of the design and know that I was part of the change of the design to make it better or more efficient, I know that we're doing our job well. And there's many examples as you drive through the city of Philadelphia that I recall through my history here of all the changes that we helped making a building work well.
Great. James, anything come to mind on a specific opportunity that you can remember? Boy, we had to really drive this home because the job wouldn't be successful without it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Troy mentioned, every job has its thing or its rub, right? What's the thing that's got to get solved for? And I can think of a job recently where we had this 20-foot wide, 14-story, full height of the building feature wall on an angle that was going in a fire egress stair in a non-TCO'd building, and the stair is in, and we're doing the fit outs. And in order to get zero occupancy and ultimately TCO, we had to get an inspection on that stair, and that stair didn't have that feature wall in. And the design was lagging, and nobody could come up with what it needed to look like or how it was going to get built. Ultimately, what we did is we dragged that portion of the job out of the project, out of the design team's court, and pulled it into ours and put a team of subcontractors together and a designer and an engineer together to come up with, one, what that structure behind that feature wall was going to look like, two, separate track what the aesthetic was going to be. We actually started building the structure before we ever even came up with what was going to go on it. And we abandoned this rail system in place on this raked wall that went up the stair. All of it was, again, back to that speed to market thing, is we needed to hit TCO, and that TCO inspection needed to include that fire stair, and I couldn't have scaffold in that fire stair. So we had to come up with a way to build up the structure with an abandoned in place scaffold and then cover it back up with finishes on the way back down so we could be out the door. So every job has its thing, right? How can we go about it differently, or how can we reimagine what we've been doing in the past to try and attack this thing to not let it hamstring us or ultimately affect an end date or a movement?
Perfect example of, the care and concern that's put into a job and just not responding to documents that are given to you. Really appreciate that. Kurt, something from your experience?
Yeah. So we had a client bring us on in a design assist capacity on a project, a campus in El Paso, Texas, and he had an out of town geotechnical engineer, which is always a disaster. And they came in with a lot of really awesome California recommendations for this Texas project. And as we went through this geotechnical report super early on, before they had designed anything, we were able to reduce pavement thicknesses, remove base underneath the pavement, and then not only that, but be able to skinny up the slab on grade, but still keep the bearing capacity that the owner was looking for, shrink footing sizes. So doing all this stuff in tandem with the design team, we actually brought in a local geotechnical engineer and had them do a peer review. So there was a lot that happened there that reduced the scope of the project, that reduced the cost of the project, the schedule of the project, but really being on that design team, helping the design team make good decisions, advising the owner, saying, hey, you should really talk to this local geotechnical engineer because they're gonna be able to help save you a ton of time and money. And ultimately, as they did that, it all came to
certainly
fruition.
An experience when we can go beyond our construction, guardrails and branch out with what we've seen happen, good or bad, in our history. We can lend that to the owners, and they benefit from that, and the project's better for it. So thank you. Okay, we have about 3 questions left, one for each of you, and then we'll wrap up today. And really appreciate the dialogue so far. Troy, so with the adoption of IPD, understanding that it's not perfect for every job, and it's new to in some respects to many of the industries. How did it change the roles and responsibilities? And I can think quickly on some of your key trade contractors that really have a different role when it comes to IPD. What does that look like, or what do you see maybe the benefits and how that was great for the opportunity?
Well, subcontractors specific to IPD, we do have key trade contractors that we bring in on early, which they are engaged with the idea of the project itself. So they're a partner to the project, and so it feels like to me that they're more engaged. They understand that it's part of the project and not just their trade, and they understand that it's an understanding that we need to be successful as a whole in order for you to be successful. And so they participate more. They're more collaborative. They're more open-minded with the ideas of change or whatever it may be happening at that particular time. And it makes it much more successful because they feel like they're part of the team. They're not just a subcontractor you hired off the side of the road. They're part of the team to make something successful. And I think they see that and they understand that. And I think it's been very successful because it puts pride in the work every day. They come to work with pride, and that makes it important for them. And it's not just the ownership of the subcontractor, it's the people that work for them. The people that are out in the field, there's more pride into the project where people have a sense of need to make a project successful. So it's been a pretty successful across the board from
I like
all the way
where
up.
you tie it into all of a sudden an electrician or one of our other key trades. They don't just care about the wiring and the power requirements, and it's about, was the job totality really a win for everyone, which is tied back in that multi-party agreement. And hey, if the total job wins, you win more, and we can make it a better experience for everybody than the push and pull that can normally happen. So thanks, Troy. Yeah.
Exactly.
James, how about some unique procurement strategies that have emerged or that you're developing for the interiors and these complex jobs? Maybe perhaps some things you've done for our Googles and other larger clients that really make a difference.
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned it before, but it's this common thread of what can we take off the table from a workload standpoint from the design team, who on a corporate headquarters job is usually burdened with trying to bring together 10 stakeholders and making decisions, right? What can we take off their lap that we feel like we're well suited for? In New York, we do a lot of stair design assist, right? That has become sort of a standard delivery method for a staircase, where we'll get a rendering of what the stair wants to look like, and then we'll take it with a design assist contractor who will marry all the pieces together: the steel, the stone finishes, the glass handrails, the architectural metal and glass railings, all those different things, and finish that design, finish the engineering, fabricate and install that stair. And it's sort of taken that mentality and trying to apply it anywhere that we can, right? If there's an opportunity for us to go direct to a sheet metal contractor and award off of an incomplete set of drawings and come up with a contractual negotiation with them where we have a competitive bid rate on a poundage of tin for sheet metal, award them with only, when we know there's only 50% of the sheet metal, maybe only the trunks are laid out, but we can get the shop drawings going on those now. When that final set of drawings comes out, those trunks are already done. He's in fabrication. Now he can focus on the branch distribution ductwork. So it's trying to come up with different ways to get contractors moving, right? Get the wheels turning, get that first hammer swinging, while maybe some more details get ironed out in the background. And again, it's always that focus of trying to drive schedule, right? Trying to drive surety to a completion date. That seems to be the push. Obviously, cost is always a separate thing, but trying to drive schedule and trying to find ways to guarantee that end date has been extremely important, and it's only getting more important as the years go on.
You hit a great point there. When owners hire us, any one of our family of companies, they're looking for a certain outcome. And when I mean certain, I don't mean a specific, I mean an actual outcome that they can trust, they can take to their board, and they can go to the bank with. Because when a job does slip, the world slips for everybody that's part of that job. And we know that the more opportunities we have in Precon to get advanced purchases and take some of the risk away, which is really what you're all doing, is de-risking the project. That bodes well for that one day when the person does sit in their seat, everything works, and there wasn't 3 delays in the move and having to move to a multi-phased occupation to try to get past those. So thank you for that. Kurt, your last specific question: when you look at your industrial clients, they obviously have a need. Every client has a different maybe use for the building, but when you see the industrial clients, where does your antenna go up, and where do you really focus on? Boy, we better put our hours after dinner on this to make sure it's successful.
Yeah, much like what James is describing, right? As far as schedule certainty, we look at being predictable in price, predictable in schedule, predictable, in outcomes, as you mentioned as well, Greg. So, we tend to look at the long pole in the tent. Again, as James said, right? We look at the things that are driving the schedule. Really, the things that are driving the schedule right now in industrial, electrical gear procurement is a beast across the country. It's concrete, steel, earthwork are really the main drivers of an industrial project, right? And so as we look at those things and break them down, we get into the nitty gritty really on the pre-construction side. And it's, how many square feet of concrete slab on grade can we pour in a day? It's how many pieces of steel are we erecting a day? Not in a week or in a month, right? But we're breaking it down to these modules with our subcontractors early on, saying, here's our schedule. And they all come back and say, yeah, we can hit that schedule. And as we look at the piece counts that we've put together in-house, we'll sit with that erector and say, can you actually erect 800 pieces of steel a day? And the answer is no, right? But they've said that they can hit this schedule. So we have to break it down, and we have to understand what we're promising to the client, and in turn what our subcontractors are promising to us. So that's something that we focus on really heavily with our industrial clients. Some of these sites that we're working on are also really big cut fill sites. And so we'll look at cubic yards that are being moved per day. We'll fly a drone that will actually tell us if we're moving that many cubic yards per day. And it calculates what's moved and how much of that has been moved or exported or imported on site, depending on the site. But we can calculate that every single day and say, hey, we're falling behind. We need to increase schedule. We need to bring out more equipment, whatever the need is for that project, so that we don't fall behind during construction. But that's all set up early on in pre-construction as we're having these conversations with our subcontractors and making sure that expectations are going to be met.
You made me think of one of my recent visits to one of your jobs, Kurt, where, and it would be terrible for us to get off this call without talking about safety and panelization of roof joist members that are put together on the ground in a very safe manner. And your teams come up with your partnership with your steel companies, an erection plan that allows those to go up safer, faster, and a bulk of the work to be done on the ground where we don't have as many lives up on roofs and climbing through steel. So I want to just let you know, we appreciate when that kind of innovation comes along in Precon and says, let's do it faster and safer at the same time. So thank you. And then our last question, which will be around Robin, and we'll call it a day. Obviously, innovation is what I just spoke of. What do you see, or what would you like to see with the next decade in the pre-construction world? And Troy, I'm going to start with you, and perhaps whether it's sector related, whether it's what you see some young people bring into your teams. I know you all love to develop that young talent, so they're there whenever you all decide to retire, which I hope isn't anytime soon. But tell me just a little bit about what your vision is. And I think vision's important in our companies, and would love to hear you start, Troy.
Number one, I think we believe the IPD world is real. And so to see IPD projects across all sectors and maybe training outside our specific business unit in how to perform the IPD world, we see that as a big growth in the future. I think we have to figure, and we're continuing to work with the BIM modeling for costing and scheduling projects. So 3D world into what we do on a daily basis is important of the future. And then lastly, we're all going to be on the same estimating platform. That's going to be great for all business units to be able to communicate more, understand where costs are across the nation, and be able to use that for history and comparable projects and things like that. We see a great tool to be used there. How do you do all that? You have to embrace change. You have to stay current with the industry's the trends. You have to be able to foster new ideas and be nimble with what all those ideas might be. So, probably much more than what I'm discussing, but there's so much every day that we change.
Yeah, I love the point where you're bringing destiny into the conversation, where we're finally all going to be able to say, hey, you had that exact job or something similar. What did it cost? And all of a sudden you just have such a leg up over our 12 and a half, $13 billion worth of work, where we can really start to capitalize on hard work done in one BU can now really be translated quickly to another. James, same question. What's the vision you have, and what are you looking forward to doing and seeing?
Yes, I mean, along the same vein of what Troy was saying before, and Kurt mentioned it a little while ago, where Structure Tone here in New York, we have that same feeling where we want to be, the safe bet, right? We want clients to know that you'll never be second guessed by your board or any senior level management staff awarding a job to Structure Tone, because they're a safe bet, right? They deliver what they say they're going to deliver every time consistently. And being in New York, the volume of projects we produce every year, there's an awful lot of information there, right? Jobs that went well, what were the schedules? What were the dollars per square foot? What were the breakdowns of them? Jobs that didn't go so well, where did they break down, right? Where were the issues? Where were the schedule issues, right? And trying to pull some of that data to get a good understanding of historical information to say these types of jobs with these types of things go well, and these types of things usually present us challenges, to try and help guide, again, that pre-con process to make sure that, hey, red flag, we see this thing as causing a problem in the past consistently, we should pay attention to that job. We should talk to that owner's rep. We should talk to that design team and say, hey, look, we should take a look at this a little bit deeper. And in the same vein, it's cost per square foot, right? It's dollars. We're breaking down jobs in here in New York into all the different various space types that make up an overall project. So whether it's cafes and amenities and theaters and workplace and arrival areas and conferencing suites, again, what are those schedules? What are those dollars per square foot from a historical standpoint? Just because of the breadth of data that we have, it'd be a shame not to use it. So as time goes on, I would hope that we can start to really widen that net of what we're pulling in and the data that we're using and the information that we're using to help guide our decision-making.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll tell you, again, just when you started to talk about, the lessons learned, two of our great principles from Thayer, the after action review, which we do, and we make sure that's shared. And then the red team review, which is questioning everything that could happen, might happen, and what's our plan B, C, and D, are great. And then we tie that into our data initiative, which is coming along wonderfully right now, and predictive analytics, as well as, we're soon going to be able to predict on projects that have these criteria. We've got to watch out for these things that are happening 7-8 months from now that we're going to be able to identify and make sure don't happen. So I appreciate that. And then Kurt, you're going to bring us home with what's the Kurt Thomas vision? What is it?
Oh, I don't think anybody wants to see that, Greg.
We're gonna be able to listen to it.
No. No, I mean, look, 10 years ago, I felt like everything was super reactive in pre-construction, right? And now with IPD and with other procurement strategies, design, build, design, assist, it's changed so much in 10 years. What does the next 10 years look like? I mean, we're already seeing AI make a huge difference, right? As far as doing takeoffs, as that continues to evolve and emerge as something that I think all of us are going to end up using. Troy's talking about 3D takeoffs in BIM models, which is huge. We're using that now, and as that continues to be better and better, I've had conversations where people have asked me if I'm concerned about my job because AI is going to take it over. I don't think we're there yet. We need that human fill. We need to be able to look at those takeoffs and say, okay, yeah, that quantity is awesome, but what does it mean? What kind of manpower do we need behind it? What are the safety issues, right? How do we take that human element in it with those quantities from AI? But it'll be interesting to see what AI does and what other different technologies emerge to continue to help us get better at pre-construction. And we have to embrace them, as Troy and James have mentioned, right? We have to embrace those technologies beyond. I don't call it the cutting edge. I call it the bleeding edge, because sometimes it hurts to be there, right? And it takes time and it takes effort to be on that leading edge of technology and construction. But that's where we want to be as an organization.
Great. Thank you very much. I think you and also with our commitment to our young people, that human element of training and being side by side at your desks, showing the young people why something may occur, I don't think can be replaced by AI. Those terrible experiences that you have that always make you ever vigilant when something comes up on a job, that's our future too, is making sure as we pass on war stories, good and bad, to our team. So I would like to thank you all. It was wonderful spending an hour with the Precon team. I don't get to do that enough, but certainly enjoyed it. It's been a great discussion. I want to thank our listeners for tuning into Building Conversations. Be sure to subscribe and catch some more episodes. And we're here. And if you have ideas on new episodes, please send those in too. We're happy to talk about how we serve our clients and our fellow employees. So thank you all.